What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Well Man's Podcast. My name is Brian Brosey. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Dr. Keoni Tita. Keoni, how are you today?
Hi, thanks everybody for listening to us again. Please tell all your friends about us. Hopefully we're giving good enough information that you can give us referrals. That's our favorite compliment.
Absolutely.
Anyway, today what we want to talk about are allergies. It's about 20%, 25% of my patients suffer from allergies. I'm sure you see this a lot, right, Brian? I mean,
Absolutely.
on histories and stuff. Anyway, more than 500 million people suffer from allergies, especially food allergies, and
Yeah, it's
effects like
interesting. You can almost be allergic to anything.
right.
You find all sorts of different allergies.
Yes, you can. And basically, what does that mean? Your immune system is overreacting to what are really should be harmless substances to the body, right? So we're talking
Okay.
about tree pollen, flower pollen, animal dander, dust, mold, um, foods, the main ones being like eggs, peanuts, wheat, nuts, shellfish. What are some other ones? Some people have allergies to latex,
Mm-hmm.
medications. We've seen that a lot too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And these things should be harmless to the body, but yet people's bodies are mounting an immune response to them and creating all kinds of symptoms, such as, well, we know them: itchy eyes, stuffy runny nose, postnasal drip, facial pressure. A lot of the headaches that I see are due to like sinusitis or pressure in the sinuses. Um, get tingling sensations when it gets bad. You get a swollen mouth, lips, itchy throat. That's some of it. Of course, itchy red eyes. It gets really bad. You get wheezing, coughing, difficulty breathing. We've seen hives, rashes, swelling. Affects the gastrointestinal area. Usually, if it's a known allergy, and versus a what we call a food sensitivity, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But um, those elicit different symptoms in the digestive tract than what an allergy would. So a true allergy would probably give you like cramps, vomiting, and diarrhea, where a food sensitivity may give you some of that, but it wouldn't be as severe, so to speak. Um, Symptoms can occur within minutes to days after exposure and can range from mild to severe. And one of the most severe reactions to an allergy is anaphylaxis, where
Right.
you have difficulty breathing, you get swelling of the larynx, and this can happen within minutes to hours, and it is life-threatening and needs to be taken care of right away. So that's why a lot of people who've experienced this and lived through it actually carry around EpiPens to help them mitigate that from happening again. So, or Benadryl or something like that, just to help temper the immune response. We've talked about tempering the immune response with injuries, right? So if you have an acute injury and you're swelling up really big, one of the first things you want to do is put ice on there to temper the immune response, or
Mm-hmm.
I should say the inflammatory response.
Mm-hmm.
But here again, allergies, as opposed to that, are just basically being exposed to exogenous substances, so outside of the body, that normally should be harmless. Okay, so we're not taught, so it's not a trauma thing here. It's just harmless substances that normally should be, shouldn't elicit any type of immune response.
Right.
All right, so they're caused by part of the immune system called your immune system, and it's divided. They kind of divide in half in medical terminology. You have Th1 and Th2. Your Th2 cells are the ones that are responsible for destroying like foreign pathogens and hence an allergen, right? So overproduction of Th2, part of the immune system, can cause your body to secrete immunoglobulins, these proteins called IgE. To get this straight, I always think of E as being evil. It's like, if you're getting an allergy, it's much more evil than having a food sensitivity, which is more of an IgG response as opposed to IgE. Well, anyway, if you get an overabundance of IgE antibodies attacking these environmental or binding to these environmental or exogenous substances, in turn, your body will then secrete things like histamines and prostaglandins and cytokines, leukotrienes, And this leads to the symptoms associated with an allergic reaction. So, and people know, I mean, you're pretty much, when you're exposed, you're miserable. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I see come in the fall and in the spring just due to like the pollen. That's especially in the spring, the pollen, and in the fall, more like ragweed and then other environmental allergens. But as I said before, it's not just environmental stuff. It can be anything. It could be medications, it can be food, but it's normally stuff that are not harmful or should be harmless.
Right.
So just to review, because I don't want to confuse people with these immunoglobulin things that our body produces to help support our immune system. But I just want to go through them quickly, and maybe on a further podcast, we can talk about them a little bit later on. But typically there's 5 classes of immunoglobulins. One is called IgM. It's basically the body's first response to a new infection or non-self antigen. And we're not really talking about IgM here. The other one is that we're not really going to talk about is IgA, and IgA is those things that it's the immunoglobulin secreted from your saliva. It gives protection to a nursing infant. So the baby takes on the IgA from the milk that it's nursing from. Infants cannot produce a lot of IgA. I think it takes a few months for them to get their IgA immune system up there. That's why nursing really helps protect infants. And it may, based on what the mother is eating and stuff like that, expose this child to different food, different food components actually will support its immune system so that later on in life, it won't be allergic to these substances. That's one of the reasons why it's very important, if you can, to breastfeed as long as you can. And then there's immunoglobulin D. Science really doesn't understand that one so much, but the two we're really talking about today that we'll hit on, the main one is IgE, right? And that's associated with allergies, and that's the one we're going to talk about mostly. And the other one is IgG. You can think about IgG being good as opposed with the G, as opposed to evil with the E. So IgG are, basically there to help. They're produced during initial infection and stuff like that, but they're basically the things that kind of you get an overabundance with food sensitivities, not food allergies, okay, or allergies in general. And I'm going to explain that more and more because it's a pet peeve of certainly allergy docs who, when they hear people saying, "Oh, I have an allergy to, I don't know, gluten." Most of the time it's probably a gluten sensitivity, instead of an allergy to it. Or I have an allergy to, what would it be? I don't know, corn or something like that. It's usually, unless you're getting these symptoms of, breathing difficulties and itchy eyes, and it's really bad, where it's a typical allergic reaction, it's most likely a food sensitivity.
Can we dive into that a little bit more, Keoni? Because it is tricky how it seems, you can have an allergic reaction where your skin is just kind of a little bit of irritated and red, all the way up to anaphylaxis, like we're talking about.
Yeah.
So kind of discerning between food sensitivity and those symptoms versus what you would experience with an allergy.
Yeah, well, maybe this will help, because why don't we talk about the 4 types of immune reactions that actually go on. So we have the classic type 1 reaction, which is IgE mediated, right? So we're talking about allergies, right?
Okay. But so going into this, we know that this is a bad thing because we got that E for evil.
Right.
Correct?
Yes, that's the way I think about it, to get it straight. All right.
Yeah.
With this, you can think about the symptoms appearing within seconds or minutes: severe swelling, breathing difficulty, rash, itchy skin, even, as we said, anaphylactic shock. Somebody with this type of allergy will know what's causing the problems, right? So you get a bee sting and all of a sudden you just, swell up, have difficulty breathing. It was the bee sting. The other type is IgG, this is a type 3 immune reaction, and it's most of the time what's known as a food allergy, but more correct terminology would be food kind of sensitivity.
Okay.
And basically what it does is it's more delayed in how it goes on. This could be days or weeks after being exposed.
Mm.
And it's basically triggered by a food that you may not even have any idea of what is triggering it, because it's a kind of a delayed reaction. And this can lead to, think about it affecting mostly the gut, so to speak, or your digestive system. So you can think about, man, every time I eat that, I get extremely gassy, I get crampy, I get diarrhea, I'm constipated, I have reflux, that type of thing. You can think about it as that, but it's definitely more of a delayed reaction than the classic type 1 allergy. There's a type 2 immune reaction. You can think about that as autoimmune stuff. Okay, this is where, you may have been exposed to some type of antigen, whether it be food or a virus or whatever, and then all of a sudden, this antigen looks very similar to, let's say, some type of receptor on your cells, like your thyroid. I'm thinking Hashimoto's thyroiditis, where you actually have autoimmunity, where your immune system can't discern self from non-self because of this insult of whatever the antigen is being similar. So think about type 2 hypersensitivities as being autoimmune reactions. And then there's this type 4, which you kind of hit on, but the classic type 4 hypersensitivity reaction, it's basically when you touch something. Think about being exposed to poison ivy, and what your skin will do. And it kind of, within 24 hours, sometimes up to 72 hours, that you rubbed against something. Think about this as being like contact dermatitis, that type of thing.
Yeah.
All right. But nevertheless, I mean, I know this is like really going into more of the science behind it, but I just want people to know. So when you're doing an allergy food test or going to an allergist, most of the time they're doing an IgE test, because they want to mitigate the worst thing, right? Which could be anaphylaxis. They want to see, what are causing all these symptoms. And usually what they do with that is I'll get into this a little bit later, but they do like a scratch test. They expose your skin to some type of environmental antigen like pollen or whatever. It's like a skin prick test.
Yeah. It's trickier than it seems, Keoni, because in reality, because I have just one big story about me kind of having an allergic reaction, it seemed, or some sort of sensitivity to some sort of food. And I was a teenager, and we ate shellfish or whatever, which I've never had a reaction to before or anything like that. Went outside, we were throwing the lacrosse ball or something like that for 30 minutes. Next thing I know, I've got hives all over my body.
Right.
None of that, no respiratory distress or anything like that, but hives absolutely everywhere. And there was nothing we could pinpoint it to. And then, a week or two later, I did go to and get one of those scratch tests, those pinprick tests, and basically had that, what was it, the type 4 type hypersensitivity, just a little reaction, some sort of contact dermatitis, just a inflammation at the site of the scratch test. And that was it, pretty much to everything. And it was, it was like, well, you're not necessarily and I remember the lady who was testing me, whatever it was, a physician or whoever it was testing me, telling me, well, you're not really allergic to anything, but you're kind of allergic to everything. So I'm having like a little response to all these little scratch tests, but nothing is getting me to this anywhere close to like anaphylactic type response. And to this day, I have no idea. I mean, I eat shellfish or whatever, and I never had a response like that ever again.
Yeah, and I had something very similar happen to me with shellfish. It was actually scallops, and it could have been. It could have been a whole number of things where, I think maybe you didn't break down the proteins, like your digestive fire didn't break down everything completely, so that your immune system, can't react to it. If you break down everything into its component amino acids, the proteins, your immune system can't react. But if it doesn't get broken down, then your immune system can react. It could be what's in the shellfish, what's
Right.
the preservative in the shellfish. But I will tell you, shellfish is a very common IgE, evil reaction, which you had because it showed up as hives. So I tell my patients when they have something like this, that you should be aware of that reaction the next time you eat shellfish. Doesn't mean you can't eat shellfish, but you should be aware of that reaction if it happens again. And one of the first things you would do, like if you started getting hives and were out somewhere and couldn't get to a doctor, I mean, definitely get some Benadryl, because that would help quell that. And if it got really bad, and sometimes it can get really bad after the second or third exposure to that substance, but not always. Sometimes it's like one and done, but it can get really bad to where you can get anaphylaxis, and that's where you definitely would want to at least have an EpiPen if you ever gone through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any research that you know of, Keoni, or any science pointing to graded exposure kind of decreasing these reactions?
Oh, absolutely, and we'll talk
Okay.
about that.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's why don't we talk about that right now, because that's something I had on my
You hear about it a lot with like peanut butter or peanut allergy.
right. Well, so you're hitting on something called the hygiene hypothesis. So this kind of gives us an idea of why people get reactions from things that should really be harmless, right?
Mm.
And the whole theory behind it is, it posits like over sanitation, being too clean, causing people to have allergic reactions. So constantly sanitizing something. This may really be associated more so with children than with adults. So children who can't play in the mud, or don't have pets, or haven't had exposure, or haven't been breastfed, they haven't had this graded exposure. So therefore, when they get a big exposure of something, they get a reaction, right? So their immune system has not been primed later or early in life. And this is why you see like children who play in the mud and get
river.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, you play in that river, you're gonna be you'll be
You're gonna have 11 fingers, or you're gonna be really strong.
Or strong immune response. Yeah, that is so the hygiene hypothesis is the number one theory out there for why they think allergies may have come about. There are other things. So we know genetics play a role. That's another theory. Another one also is very interesting, vitamin D. Not getting enough vitamin D, especially at a young age, is also helps. Even as adults, like getting vitamin D really helps balance your immune response.
Right.
Another one is like, for example, this is part of the theory, or at least let science know what the hell is going on, because the whole thought was, I don't know, it was only just a few years back, right? And still some people are doing this, but a few years back, in schools, anybody who has like a peanut allergy, they're eliminating foods, right? You can't, this kid can't be around this child can't be around that thing. So let's just have them avoid it completely. And what we're finding is, by them avoiding it, can actually make it worse later. So part of treating these things is exposing them to minute amounts of it, so that they can prime their immune system, so that they don't get this overreaction into an anaphylactic thing. So it's like you really want to find a fine balance between not getting overexposed, but also not getting underexposed.
Yeah.
And then there's something else also. They think it may also have something to do. We've talked about this before. Like most of your immune system resides in your skin and in your gut. So, and the reason why is because these are the areas that are exposed to the outside world, right? Your body's constantly sampling the outside world, either through the gut or through the skin. Well, children, if they're constantly being exposed to, I don't know, antigens through skin or broken skin or something like that early on, it's not a great way to build up your immune system, as opposed to being exposed to stuff through your gut. It's always funny to me when I see kids and talk to parents, and I was this way too, where kids are constantly, it just seems like innately priming their immune system by putting stuff in their mouth. Doesn't matter what what it is. Could be a penny here, it could be whatever it is. It's constantly like priming their immune system. What we see is if you're priming your immune system through your gut, you tend to have a strong immune system later.
Wow.
So that's fascinating to me, right? Because that also says something about some of the treatments that come on. Because if you're priming your immune system through your gut, you're probably also helping your gut flora protect you. Right. And it probably has something to do with that. You do have skin flora, but most of your bacteria in your body reside in your gut. So those are the kind of theories behind it.
You want to put your toddler on the penny vaccine 2022, follow that up with a quarter vaccine in 2023, and move on to the gross wet dollar bill.
Right. That's exactly right. And so it's like, I think and that's one of the things I tell people. It's like, you really should don't be over cautious. Like,
so there's a loss of immune system buildup and kind of sterility, or being completely sterile with everything, and we want some of this exposure.
Yes, we do. Absolutely, we do. So going back to food sensitivities as opposed to food allergies or just allergies in general, we know, as we said before, these are IgG antibodies. One of the tests to do this is through an ELISA test, enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. One of the things you can do is, and I've ran some of these, I don't run them as much anymore, but basically you can do like a blood draw, send it into a lab, and they'll see what the person's, how much food sensitivity they have via the IgG ELISA testing.
And when you say how much food sensitivity they have, what do you mean by that?
So for example, these tests, if you run this test and it's a food sensitivity test, if you run this test and it just lights up and everything is there, on that test, what do you do with that? Do you just eliminate? Well, you can't eat anything, for 2 or 3 months. That's not feasible. But if the test comes back and, 1 or 2 things show up, especially if they're very common, then you can kind of, through a food elimination diet, which is another way to help treat these things. I would say even both allergies and food sensitivities, but through a food elimination diet, you can find out what you're sensitive to by just eliminating, the basic foods and see how you react to them. So for example, if you eliminate the like dairy and corn and stuff like that, and all of a sudden you're digesting better and just overall feel better, you can be rest assured that, the elimination diet is picking out things. Or you can run a test like this ELISA test. And if it all lights up, then what you do is you have to find out what are the most severe reactions. And then you can also you can kind of aid the body through like digestive enzymes or probiotics to help temper the immune response, or do a gut restorative type program, which we can talk about later in other podcasts, that build up kind of the gut lining and the immune system of the gut so that you don't get these awful, kind of reactions.
Yeah. As far as the ideal test, Keoni, or where you recommend to begin with this, where do you recommend? Because I thought, even when I was getting that scratch test as a high schooler or middle schooler, or whatever it was, and they were like, oh, you have a reaction to everything. It's kind of like, well, no shit. You pricked me in the back with a foreign something, and I had a reaction to it. Like, that makes a lot of sense to me, regardless of what it was.
Right. And it's the severity of the reaction. So, probably what you were experiencing was normal, but that scratch test is more of a test for IgE stuff instead of IgG stuff, which the ELISA test looks at. Okay. So that scratch test is for that. And unless you get a really bad response from that test, I mean, again, it's normal. It's fairly normal. The nice thing, if there is a nice thing, the nice thing about the allergies, most of the time people will know what it is, especially if they get hives soon after they had a meal. That's typically way a lot of times it will present, or you get real itchy after a meal and you can think, oh, well, I ate such and such. That will tell you that's not a food sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
more IgE mediated.
Okay.
But yes, you are right. I mean, there's a gray area here where it can be hard to discern, what you are actually reacting to, especially where you begin to react to everything. Like I have patients who react to everything. Chemical sensitivity patients. Every year when during the spring, pollen just can wreak
Mm-hmm.
havoc on some people. So it's like really what we're trying to do is build up their own innate defenses so that they don't see this stuff as, or their immune system doesn't see it as foreign and want to create all these, chemical mediators that just make you miserable. Runny nose, itchy eyes, all the histamines and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we talked about Th1 and Th2 immune response and allergies. Basically, what we're talking about here is the two. I call them the two subsets of what we call T cells. Right? There's Th1 subset, Th2, and they both complement each other. And so the Th1 lymphocytes, or these T cells, basically, what they do is they trigger the destruction of a pathogen that, I don't know, enters a cell, like viruses or whatever, through a cell-mediated immune response, and this can bring on other problems like autoimmune reactions later. The Th2 cytokines destroy extracellular pathogens that invade the body or blood through the fluids. All right, so this is where we're talking about like allergies, things that are more exogenous. And there are supplements out there that can help bring these T cell, Th1 and Th2 into balance so that one is not out of balance over the other. You want them to be finely tuned against, you want a strong Th1, Th2 balanced immune response. And if you have that, you're not going to get, bad reactions to things. So, and then that includes allergies, food sensitivities. Okay. So I want to bring that up because I think that is important to kind of understand. But, the other thing I also want to bring up to people with allergic disorders is we kind of see that there's kind of this, what is in science called this progression. It's called the atopic march. So atopy, you may have heard of things like atopic dermatitis, right? Basically what it means is it's an allergy. Atopy basically means A without, topic means place. So it's basically like you're getting exposed to something that shouldn't give you that problem. It's from another place and it shouldn't give you a problem in the place of your body. So atopic dermatitis, which is around the skin, that's an example of using that word. But with that being said, so the atopic march kind of, when people become allergic to things, it tends to show up as like in a progression, like atopic dermatitis, and then you get this allergic rhinitis, and then you get asthma, and these things are all signs of having allergies. And then later on, food allergies. So it's kind of like this progressive thing that they kind of see. It's not, there's no like, I don't know, gold standard to it, but it does seem like one leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another, right? And asthma is a can be a lifelong inflammatory disease, and it's basically characterized by the airway being hyper responsive to allergens, right? And so the inner airways become inflamed. It's almost like it starts at your skin and it progresses along to your sinuses, and then it's like constantly going further and further into the immune system. So skin to the sinuses, down into the lungs, and asthma can really be scary for a lot of people. A lot of people have to carry around inhalers, corticosteroids, anti-inflammatory medications, and stuff like that. And these things over time can lead to problems, big problems. They have side effects. And the issue is with a lot of these things, people, later on in life, they don't understand that these things can have devastating consequences about as far as their health goes. So it's very important to, it's not, I don't want any of my patients having to go through an asthma attack, but if you want to get off these things, you really have to look to help and optimize the body through natural substances and even through kind of eliminating things, right? So if you're in a area or constantly go to a work environment that I don't know, people are smoking, or maybe in your home these days where family members are smoking, it should be done outside. That can exacerbate, asthma.
Well, it also, I mean, like the smoking example, clearly everything we were talking about before is supposed to be harmless. The smoking is obviously harmful.
Yeah,
So,
but it's what's really interesting is it's for some people you can get an immediate reaction, right? But as far as smoking being harmful, absolutely, it's very insidious, right? So it can show up as lung cancer 10, 20, 30 years later. But people that are like not getting initially exposed to smoke and get a reaction right away from, or get an asthma attack, that's just showing that how they're reacting to things like smoke, which for small amounts should not be harmful to you, right?
okay, I
You know?
see. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see.
Um, so with that, especially with children, it's like very important, like in the home, is to change your filters with the HVAC, like do all that stuff, like the hygiene stuff that you can do that doesn't require you taking anything, to reduce what we call the total load on the body.
Mm,
And the whole thing about total load, just to give people an analogy, just think about filling a glass with water. And let's say, okay, you've been exposed to cigarette smoke, you fill the glass a little bit. Okay, you ate junk food that gave you gastrointestinal upset, you fill the glass up a little bit more. You're under stress, you fill the glass up a little bit. You didn't sleep well last night, you fill the glass up a little more. And then maybe you're exposed to some type of, I don't know, like shellfish, and now all of a sudden it comes out, the water overflows in the glass, and now you get symptoms.
right.
So if you can eliminate, kind of like clean up your exposure and like look where the weak links are in your health, you can keep that glass from overflowing.
Right.
So that's kind of the way I address, allergies and these foods, these little nagging things that are constantly bothering us. I address it, this way.
So,
Through,
and can you detail that a little bit more? Obviously, addressing it that way by kind of ensuring your health is in order,
yep.
and keeping the glass from overfilling by making sure your health is in order. But what other things do you use to kind of work with allergies? And also, what do we see conventionally? We know conventionally Benadryl. We talked about inhalers. We talked about the EpiPen, all sorts of things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, what I do is I will definitely do the lifestyle stuff, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And that includes sleep. That includes like, okay, let's make sure your digestive system is working okay. Let's make sure, you have good flora on your skin and in your gut. Those things is how I address that. But from a conventional standpoint, I mean, we're talking about, they use antihistamines, right? Because we know histamines, these cell mediated, this immune reaction, you get all this histamine secretion and leukotrienes, all these cytokines that cause the symptoms. So antihistamine, so stopping the histamine response from like things like mast cells.
Mm.
And then and then decongestants, right? So we think about things to dry up the passageways and stuff. Corticosteroids. There's other things called leukotriene antagonists. Again, the leukotrienes, you want to suppress that response, so you use antagonistic medications. There's something called cromolyn sodium. Just again, this thing, it's basically, cromolyn sodium is a nasal spray that is used for like rhinitis. It could be inhaled for asthma and stuff like that. Beta agonists, these things are think about inhalers, bronchodilators, that type of thing. And then when it gets really bad, you think about EpiPens. And then we also have immunotherapy, which you kind of hit on. Immunotherapy is this is conventional treatment now, which is really more of a naturopathic treatment, but exposing the body in minute amounts to whatever we think the person is reacting to so that they build an appropriate, well-balanced immune response. So if you're really having a rough time with pollen, you can do immunotherapy with like pollen, so to speak, like with skin prick tests and stuff like that, minute amounts of being exposed to the skin so that you build some type of immunity.
Yeah. Just take that little Coke spoon and snort a little pollen.
Well,
work your way up to a line, I guess.
So there's something to be said for that, right? Because there is some research that supports, like, wherever you are, if you can get local honey, real honey,
right,
that has the pollen in it and stuff, it can help support your immune system so that you don't get as bad of a reaction.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that with locally grown foods, honey, like you're talking about.
Right. And that speaks to like sublingual immunotherapy, which is pretty popular in Europe, not so much popular here, where you expose whatever antigen under the tongue, let's say pollen or whatever.
Sure.
And therefore you prime the immune response that way instead of pricking the skin. But it's called sublingual immunotherapy as opposed to regular immunotherapy. Those things can help. I mean,
well, it seems to be the only way that you are actually working towards treating the situation. Everything else that we just listed conventionally just seems to be
symptom management.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's symptom management, and it's not that I'm against that at all. What I'm against is just doing symptom management without getting them primed so that they don't need to rely on their medications, right?
100%.
So
yeah.
So the number one thing, so getting to the way I attack this problem, besides the stuff we talked about, lifestyle change, all that stuff. Number one thing, we talked about this over and over again, water. Staying well hydrated. I'm really kind of discouraged. Most allergy doctors don't talk about this. Water is a natural antihistamine. It will prevent higher histamine levels from causing allergy symptoms. So if you stay hydrated, you do really well for protecting yourself against miserable symptoms. It's not the cure by any means, but man, it can make a big, big difference. The way I do this, especially during allergy season, I tell my allergy sufferers, first thing in the morning, you have 16 ounces of water, drink it down, and then drink throughout the day. Water's number one. The other thing also is it will help hydrate your skin. A lot of people will have skin issues like on their feet or their hands that are like allergic reactions where the skin gets dry and cracked. You want to make sure your skin is well hydrated too. And you want to have a balance. Like what they find is people's skin who doesn't have like this, our skin is protected by like an oil layer. And people's skin that are really dry, when that oil layer kind of is not there and supporting you well, the skin can become dry and cracked. So it's really like, think about your healthy fats, think about getting water in. Yeah. So you get that balance. So you create a barrier there that aids in your immune response.
Yeah, and certainly a topic for another, episode, but I've heard that in regards to kind of these intense face washes too. These are not as natural, where you really wipe everything off your face and skin and kind of remove that protection.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's something to be said for, again, it goes back to being too clean, right? That's like, you don't constantly want to be washing your face and get rid of that oily layer or your body. You want to use the natural oils in your skin to help protect you. And you can aid that oil layer by one of the things that have been shown to help with allergies by making sure you're getting appropriate like fish oil and things like that in your diet. Your omega-3s, omega-6, good healthy fats can really help with that. Mm-hmm. Probably for a long-term solution, at least naturally, probiotics, right? We talked about the hygiene hypothesis. You definitely want to support your immune system, your gut immune system. So probiotics are a big, big deal. somebody who suffers from allergies, eating yogurt, store-bought yogurt's not going to do it. You should really think about getting a good quality probiotic. And sometimes over-the-counter probiotics are not in order for that. Talking to a physician who knows about probiotics can get you a good one. Talked about vitamin D, right? One of the theories of why allergies come about is because vitamin D is not optimal, or you didn't get enough when you were young. There's some research on vitamin E, helps modulate allergies and other diseases. Makes me always think, vitamin E is very high in nuts and seeds, and also in nuts and seeds are good, healthy fats. And you never get to this, Brian, but one of the things in research that shows
I'm getting excited.
Supports the the immune response. I know you'll never guess it, but magnificent magnesium is one of them. It's been shown to actually improve symptoms in asthma patients in several clinical trials. And it's very interesting because magnesium is kind of like, it's a natural muscle relaxer. So think about it, keeping the, the bronchospasms down, right? So that's pretty amazing. There are other things that I use, but usually in combinations with other herbs. One herb is called butterbur. It's been used in traditional Chinese medicine for a long time. I'll talk about some Chinese medicines I use, but I typically don't use like isolated herbs in Chinese medicine. I just use them in combinations. But you will see things where butterbur is sold over the counter or online. It can help with allergies. There's some compounds in there that seem to help. Another favorite of mine is rosmarinic acid. Rosmarinic acid, as the name kind of implies, is very high in rosemary. There are rosemary, but it's found in various herbs like basil, oregano, so on and so on. It has been shown to tremendously help out allergic symptoms. So a lot of times when you're looking at supplements online, you'll see things with herbs that have rosemary in it, or have rosemary and something called quercetin. And quercetin is a compound that is I call it a natural antihistamine, where it's found high in onions, like apple skins, fruits and vegetables. Anyway, it's great at tempering the immune response. But some of these supplements will have that in it as well. And then there's something called nettles, stinging nettles. So you'll see that a lot. Again, it's another one that tempers the immune response. These things are very, very safe to take. You're not going to have any problem with them at all. I tell people
about eating them though, Keoni.
Well, if they're harmless if you cook them. You're not going to get stung by them. You certainly can eat them. I don't know if you're going to get.
That's right.
I don't know if you're going to get benefit from. You probably will get some benefit eating them as greens and stuff, like in a stir fry or whatever. Nettles grow everywhere, but I typically use them in capsule form. So, but the data on it's pretty amazing. In an open trial of 69 patients with allergic rhinitis, 58% of the subjects who took 600 milligrams of nettle leaf, freeze-dried nettle leaf, reported relief of symptoms, and 48 found it more effective than over-the-counter medications. So 48%. That's pretty cool,
Yeah.
And I usually use one of the products I use has stinging nettles, quercetin, and rosemary in it, and so that can help. Another thing that people probably have heard of, spirulina. Spirulina is just a cyanobacterium, a type of cyanobacterium, but it has like lots of good stuff in it. It's like a natural food-based multivitamin, really, but it has shown to have some neat effects on helping with allergic symptoms. Vitamin C and bioflavonoids are another one that is huge, have some good research on it. There's another kind of bioflavonoid called hesperidin methylchalcone. It's very similar in chemical structure to quercetin. Hesperidin has found to, let me see if I can find a study. So at daily doses of hesperidin methylchalcone, 100 to 600 milligrams, it provided complete relief of allergic symptoms in 35% of study participants. Another 34% found partial relief. So that's cool, and very safe. What else? One of the things that I've used for asthma in particular, all right, is a compound called bromelain. I use a high dose, and it's a great remedy for really preventing asthma attacks if you take high enough doses of it. And I'm talking like 3 to 5 grams, sometimes up to 9 grams of it a day. It can really help reduce swelling and inflammation and prevent. And it also helps if you take it between meals, can help get rid of some of the pressure in your nose from allergic symptoms and stuff like that. So bromelain is pretty cool. And then just some Chinese herbs. I won't really go into these too much, but most people who know about Chinese herbs have heard of something called Bian Pian. It's a great over-the-counter traditional Chinese medicine. I mean, you can go to any Chinese herbal shop and they would have this. Even you could probably go to any grocer, Asian grocery store, and they in their pharmacy section would probably have Bian Pian. Anyway, it's a combination of 11 Chinese herbs that is great. It can act pretty acutely. Another one's called Pimin Kanwan, and then there's depending on in Chinese medicine, depending on how the symptoms present, then you come up with a certain formula. So there's another really popular one out there called Jade Windscreen. It's used to help prevent flus, but it does help support qi, which then could help support what we call wei qi, which really, if you support wei qi, you're going to help them fight allergies also. So I don't want to get too much into that, but the Chinese herbals, if you haven't done that, that can really help. I use that a lot in my clinic.
Where does that fall in your order of operations? We talked about staying hydrated being first and foremost.
It falls at the bottom, but it's definitely before prescription meds or over-the-counter meds.
Right.
And that's all in context, right? I mean, absolutely, if you're just having a hard time and you can't breathe, absolutely, I want you to take something that's going to allow you to do that. I mean, dang, But the whole thing is to help people. It's not normal. Let me just put it this way. You came into this world, most of us, 99% of us came into this world with an immune system. And that immune system needs to be primed appropriately. And for most of us with allergies, that immune system was not primed appropriately, but it's never too late to prime it appropriately by supporting the body and the weak links. The body's an interesting thing. When you're under a lot of stress, and maybe you've gone through this, it's like that analogy with the glass. Like if I'm under a lot of stress, I'm more prone to what? I can't sleep, and therefore I'm the stress can bring out cold sores or whatever. Or, for some people under high stress, shingles, that type of thing. For some people, the allergy symptoms get there. So it's really, we can look at these things, how to attack these things from a Western perspective using natural products and over-the-counter stuff, but really it's about let's support the body. And right. I know we sound like a broken record when we're on our podcast and do that, but you can do a lot with just water. Like if you're chronically dehydrated, not drinking, and the older we get, we really do become that way, because most of us lose our thirst mechanism and stuff like that. It can go a long way to just supporting, the decrease in allergies.
Right.
Couple things that I know people want to know about, for symptoms, you can do neti pots, right? That's where you basically use like a saline solution or a saline half xylitol solution to help drain your sinuses. That can certainly help. Xylitol chewing gum may also help. People, part of their allergy symptoms may get pressure in their middle ears. If you chew, a lot of times you get that eustachian tube to kind of drain that middle ear to help. And also the xylitol in the gum. We talked about this on the Sweetener podcast. It can actually inhibit some of these allergens from attaching to the mucosa so that your body can't respond to it. And then, steam inhalation with like certain essential oils and stuff like that, especially thyme, could help open up the sinus passages and stuff like that. So there are lots of natural remedies to help with that, but it all goes back to supporting the body to help allergy sufferers. That's all I want to talk about, unless I missed something. Brian, is there anything else?
No, I think A lot of great points. And I know people commonly move somewhere new and experience new allergies, and we kind of touched on it, but getting into those new foods or being local, like the local honey, eating local, can really help temper that experience as well.
Yep.
So very timely episode as we get into the spring and summer here.
No doubt. The pollen counts here in North Carolina are crazy. So, and I have a lot of people coming in suffering from, because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to reiterate what you said at the beginning, Keoni, if you know anyone who would benefit from listening to the podcast, please share with them. Leave us a review on whatever service you listen or choose to view us on. We are on YouTube. Any support, thumbs up, review, comment, like, subscribe, all of that helps us grow and just helps us help more people. And we appreciate that. And we look forward to helping more people. Anything else, Keoni?
That's it. Take care, everybody. Thanks again for listening.
Be well.